put the humans before the profits, and the profits will follow, I promise. If you empower your leaders and you yourself as leaders lead with a human-centric model of leadership, your profits will follow and you will keep the employees, which of course will lead to higher profits. But start with the people and then get into profits, and your business will not only succeed, but you'll scale and you'll thrive.
Hey, Profit First entrepreneurs and thought leaders. I am so excited today. I have a special guest with us, and we're going to talk about it's more of a niche item, but I think that it still applies to many of our industries. And we're going to talk about human resources, particularly as it deals with the manufacturing. But I think that this is great because really, there's so many keys here that's really important. One is working with staff and team that's overseas, right? And how do you motivate them? Internal resources also. And I'm really excited because I get to have this conversation with Jim Mayer. And Jim is an amazing individual. He is an advocate for the manufacturing industry. And he's personally driven by that belief that the middle class really built this nation. They built it on the foundation of manufacturing. And with over 2 decades of experience in skilled trades and manufacturing, Jim is dedicated to really changing the perception of the industry that's often seen as dark and dangerous and dirty. You guys are thinking about, 1920s, right? And he wants to change that perception, right? And Jim is the founder of a company called TCO Strategies, where he leverages his expertise in company culture assessments, employee engagement surveys, and leadership development to help manufacturers align their teams, cultivate stronger cultures, and enhance engagement. He holds a business degree as well as a political science degree from Arizona State University, and he has his MBA that focuses on executive management from Ohio University. And Jim possesses great knowledge and skills in driving meaningful change. And I'm so excited to bring Jim on our podcast today to talk more about really honing in HR, specifically with the manufacturing industry. So please join me in welcoming Jim to our platform. Hey, Jim, how are you doing today?
Wonderful, Suzanne. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Well, this is an exciting topic, and I can't tell you that outside of AI and tech, this is probably one of the industries that's seeing the most change and most impact right now, with just tensions that are happening internationally,
Yeah,
manufacturing coming back to the United States, lack of people, right? Where
absolutely.
we've got a shrinking population, and we still have out of this world demand. So this is a very, very important topic. So Jim, first of all, I always love to know the backstory. Like, how did you get into this? How did this pique your passion? I see that you're multi-discipline, political science, business, do those two go together? Um,
They do.
tell me about it.
Yeah, so I actually started my collegiate career right after high school, of course, but I quickly found that it wasn't for me. So I stopped going to school after my first semester of college at ASU, and my dad said, "You don't have to go to university. I don't think that university was right for you, but you do need to learn a trade because you need health insurance." And this was back in the late 90s before people under the age of 26 were just grandfathered into parents' insurance programs, right? So I learned how to be a carpenter. I was in construction and built custom log homes, supplemented my income by working in restaurants and various retail jobs on weekends, but just kind of floated around and never really felt like I had that place. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and I had fallen off of my like sixth roof of the year into a snowbank in northwestern Colorado, and I was freezing. I'm standing around a fire, and one of my distributors who serviced our job site came up and said, "Hey, you're physically killing yourself. Why don't you sell these products that you already know?" I was like, I'm not a sales guy. I tried selling cars once and it just wasn't for me. And he said, well, that's not really sales. That's car sales. It's different than B2B sales. Give it a shot. And so I did. I jumped in, actually moved myself, packed my truck up, moved to Long Beach, California, where I walked into my first machine shop. And I absolutely fell in love with the sights and the smells and the sounds of this machine shop. They were taking these pieces of metal and making them into little aircraft screws. It was a company called West Coast Aerospace in Wilmington, California. It was just infectious. It got in my blood. I couldn't get shake it at all. So I then felt like I had my calling, and I started learning more about manufacturing, and left that position after a time and went and worked for a factory automation company, a Japanese company, selling factory automation supplies. And I covered Utah and Arizona, out of Southern California. From there, I went back into industrial distribution, but to a distributor who had a little bit more of a manufacturing focus, which was fantastic. Really honed my love and understanding of manufacturing and some of the different verticals that exist. It's not all just machine shops. It's not all textiles and food manufacturing. You've got like we were talking about before, you've got wig manufacturers, you have jewelry manufacturers, and a lot of those companies aren't often seen as manufacturers in the traditional sense, but they very much are. And from there, I just needed to continue this journey. So I went on to work for a nonprofit organization called the NTMA, National Tooling and Machining Association. Wanted to give back to the industry somewhat. I knew going into that you don't make a whole lot of money working for nonprofits, but it's a really good feeling that you get at the end of the day. And I really accomplished that. And from there, that really opened my eyes to more of the national and international side of manufacturing. And I got to tour Europe and go from Munich to Milan and tour different manufacturing facilities over there. I got to expose to the Japan and Asian manufacturing markets. And so it really expanded my horizons and my network and all those kinds of fun things, which gave me the opportunity to go work for another Japanese company and Swiss company co-owned called Big Kaiser. They're now Big Daishowa, completely absorbed by the Japanese parent company. Worked there for a couple of years, helping them through a change management process. Luckily, it was COVID, and I had the ability to still travel as a frontline employee. Airplanes were very empty, but I still made an impact for this organization. And at the start of 22, started my own company, TCO Strategies. I'm on the third go-to-market plan for this organization, just finding that niche that works within a niche. And through that journey, I started the Manufacturing Culture Podcast, which I've been fortunate enough to have you on as a guest back in February. Thank you again for being on. So it's been a heck of a journey. It's been a lot of fun. The story is still being written, as they say in literature. I'm media res right now. I'm in the middle of the story, and if they were writing the book about my life, this is where they would start it. They'd give the backstory, and the future still being written. So it's a lot of fun.
I love it. I love it. Quite a diverse array of experience. And, I like to kind of start at, first of all, the discussion on the state of manufacturing today, right? And where we are, because I think like a lot of industries are evolving right now. And
Yeah.
manufacturing, as we talked about earlier, is probably one of the most rapidly evolving ones right now, just with the state of politics that's happening in the world. So Jim, first of all, share what some of the things you're seeing, some of the trends that you're seeing, some of the things that we need to expect, and some of the opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you talked in while you were giving my intro about AI and technology, and those two things are really driving what we're going to expect in manufacturing. You know, ChatGPT came out and everybody was scared that it was AI is going to take everybody's jobs. And that's not really the case. We've been dealing with AI and automation and technology like that in manufacturing for quite some time, 5 years to a decade at this point. And what we're finding, and I think a lot of industries will find as well as they start to adopt this technology, is AI isn't there to replace jobs. AI is there to help you upskill your employees and really reframe the world of work that they're in, take away some of the repetitive tasks, take away some of the dangerous tasks, and really give you the ability to provide learning pathways for your employees that lead to better paying, more sustainable jobs in the future. A couple other things that you talked about in that intro, skills gap, not being able to find people. That's been something that we've known was coming for a decade and a half. Really, as the baby boomer generation ages out of the workforce, in precision manufacturing machine shops alone, we're looking at a shortage of about 2.5 million machinists by the year 2028. So in the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have this massive shortage, which is where AI and automation really plays a part. But backing up even further, the root cause of this is that offshoring that you also mentioned in that, right? In the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and 2000s, we saw a lot of manufacturers move their operations overseas to help cut cost of labor, which is a business move. It's not a personal move. It's not a political move. It's a business move. But what that did was it really devastated a lot of communities in the US, communities that were built on the foundation of those manufacturing jobs. And that's where we saw a lot of the contraction in the middle class, which provided that disparity and juxtaposition between the haves and the have-nots that we have in this country.
And the thing is, it's coming back, right? It's all
It
coming back
is.
now.
It
And
is.
it's interesting to see how people perceive those jobs. Are they wanting those jobs? Are they, everyone went to college, and now they're finding out that maybe they shouldn't have with student loans, but or at least not majored in the things that they majored in.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting topic there. But I'm curious, what is the state of labor right now, the labor market that's in the manufacturing industry?
Uh, as far as what, when you say the state of labor, are you saying, well, we obviously are in a shortage. We obviously struggle to get students, young people interested. They are looking at renaming Generation Z, though, to the trade generation because we are seeing more people in Generation Z bucking some of the trends that you've seen from the millennial and Gen X of going to university. They don't want that debt. They want to be able to get out of high school, find a job, a sustainable career path that doesn't necessarily provide them debt, provide them with a lot of work-life balance. You're not taking a home manufacturing at the end of the day, right? You don't pack up a briefcase with pieces of metal and take it home and machine it at home, right? When you clock out of a manufacturing job, you're clocked out. And so it provides a lot of work-life balance, provides little to no college debt. These young people are finally starting to see that there is a pathway that doesn't include hundreds of thousands of dollars of college debt and really the work-life balance that they are looking for and talking about. So we're seeing that influx back into the trades, where I say that tentatively because some of the trades programs require more time and effort. Like a precision machinist, if you're looking at being a manual machinist or a tool and die apprentice or anything like that, you're looking at 3 to 4 years as far as the program goes. Typically, those are earn while you learn, right? So you're getting paid, but they're not as quickly filling as some of the shorter pathway apprenticeship programs. Like welding is a year to 2 years. CNC operators, 2 years. So there's different pathways that people can take. So we're filling different jobs at different paces right now. But the outlook is phenomenal. The growth potential in this industry is phenomenal. We still have mom and pop shops in this industry, which really builds up the manufacturing economy. We can't all just be the Boeings and the Honeywells of the world, right? We need those tier 1, 2, and 3 manufacturers, and that's what those mom and pops bring to the table.
I love it. I love it. So peeling it back to go into the HR challenges that you're
Yeah.
seeing. In terms of the challenges with HR, we know there's a labor shortage now. And what are you currently seeing in terms of trends that's being done, or what can a manufacturing company do to, first of all, continuously attract people into their industry? Like, what are some things that can be done to increase that pipeline and allow them to attract folks that's going to allow them to run in a sustainable and profitable way?
Yeah. So things that companies, it's no secret sauce. It's no magic, wand. Manufacturers have for a while looked outside of their local communities, and a lot of them are in communities that need these jobs the most, right? We're talking about underserved communities, and we need them to start looking at those people, the people in their local communities. There are now pathways and programs, learning programs that manufacturers can take somebody and be production ready in 4 to 6 weeks. We're not talking about spooling up, years at this point. We can get somebody ready in 4 to 6 weeks, and that's really amazing. So manufacturers and really any industry, look to your local communities. There are people in your local communities that are looking for work. And it's really about how do you position yourself within the market for manufacturers. If you're making aerospace parts, if you're making defense parts, if you're making medical devices, make sure that you're sharing that vision, that mission with prospective employees, because they, especially as you get younger in generation, they need to feel connected with what the mission, the vision, and the values are of the organization in order to really come in and look at jobs as more than just jobs, to look at jobs as a sustainable career path, working for something they believe in. The typical Gen Zer changes jobs every 1.3 years. That statistic is astronomical and really costly when it comes to retraining and retention metrics, right? So if you're able to connect people at a higher level at the values of the organization, really helps you keep them, but recruiting them as well. So that's some of the things that I would look at.
I love that. I love that. Just really embedding them into the purpose, to a bigger purpose, really.
Absolutely.
And I love that. Something that you said too was creating a training program, but not just a training program, a training program that allows quick wins. The example that I give is like, you look at, I mean, Amazon's not a manufacturer, but, somebody's going to leave that line every single day and not come back. And so it's important to be able to get somebody else tomorrow and have them train within 2 hours, be up and running. And so the fact that they're creating a program that allows someone to be successful in 4 weeks is extremely important for
Absolutely.
that.
Yeah, the program that I'm speaking of is by a company called Ball2 Technologies. They're actually here in Arizona. They have the ability to take somebody from Burger King, flipping burgers, Dunkin' fries, and have them manufacturing ready in as little as 4 weeks. And they help provide a continuum and checkpoints and progress points on where you should be giving them raises as they go through this. But it's not all just on the computer learning. There's a lot of practical knowledge that goes into this, and practicing the concepts that are in this program. So it's wonderful. It also helps upskill people within your organization. If you've got somebody in a warehouse capacity like in Amazon, right? And they have a functioning knowledge of what your business does, you can take that warehouse person and get them production ready in 4 to 6 weeks, and they're still employed with you throughout that continuum. You can make it as long as you want. If you want to say, hey, this performance review, you did a wonderful job at X, Y, and Z. What is your pathway at this company? And they say, oh, I want to get into production. Fantastic. I've got a tool. Let's plan on over the next 9 months, you work on this program, this production ready program, and we'll have you working on the line by your next performance review. And so you can set metrics for them on growth and within the role. It's a phenomenal way. And to your point, it creates those little wins and that are so important in any aspect of business. But when you're talking about HR, when you're talking about recruiting and retention, holy smokes, if you can have a couple of small wins to prove out that you are there and you're with them, man, that's really important.
It so is important. Now, the other thing that you mentioned too, Jim, is related to allowing someone to feel like they're part of something bigger that matters. And you brought out an interesting statistic. You said that Gen Zers are typically only there for 1.3 years. Now, like in my generation, you were there for at least 4, millennials were there for at least 2. This is getting worse. This is going in the wrong direction, right? Because it's expensive to hire somebody else and train
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Um, and so what can be done, like in terms of practicals, to make someone feel part of that culture? Because in manufacturing, sometimes you're dealing with a larger workforce and you're dealing with a multi-generational workforce in some cases. And it, like you said, it's different that, you don't go to college for this necessarily. You don't get to come home with a briefcase and a laptop. And sometimes there's a stigmatism, right? That
Yeah.
goes along with that too, from a personal just feeling insecure. What can we do to drive up so these 1.3-year stayers can stay for at least 2 to maybe 4 years?
Yeah, and it all, like I said earlier, Suzanne, it all begins with that defining of your vision and your mission, and really your organizational values. The words matter that you put on a wall in any organization, but when you're in a production environment, manufacturing environment, skilled trade environment, I'll even go into the construction and HVAC and plumbing and electrical side and welding, fabrication. When you're in that kind of environment and you're walking by banners every day and you see that vision, you see the values, you see the mission statements, you have to believe in everything that you see up there. And more than you have to believe, you have to work for a leader that walks that lives that mission, that vision, and those values. Because if you're expected to live those, why is your leader not, right? So if you're able to connect people, especially this younger generation, with the words that are on the wall and have leaders that live those, then you will keep them. You will keep them a lot longer. It's not necessarily more money that the Gen Z is looking for. It used to be, and we're both Gen X, I think. If I heard you earlier correctly, I'm not guessing that because you look like a millennial to me, and I feel like a millennial. But the Gen Zs, they're driven by purpose. They're driven by, am I creating a part of the human body in this CNC machine that will help potentially my grandma who can't walk because she has a bad hip? Am I passionate about exploring outer space? These kids have had technology and the ability to consume content from a very, very young age. I had to read books about Mars and the moon and things like that, and it sounded really neat. But when I turned on the TV, it wasn't something where I could see an image of it. These kids have seen the images of Mars. They've seen images from the Hubble Space Telescope. They've seen airplanes and cars evolve. They've been able to consume content. So if we can't connect to what they're interested in, beyond the mission, vision, and values, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice, because they become so passionate and loyal once you're able to really connect them to the things that they're interested in. And that's my advice when you are recruiting, is to look for those passions in people, because passion really truly does breed purpose.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I love that. The person that's creating a hip replacement for their grandmother one day. So that's very important to be going to work to do that. Now,
Absolutely.
one of the things that I love about manufacturing is it's not uncommon that you're going to be working with an international team. You may have US operations, you may have operations in China, Philippines, India, and that adds a whole different dynamic to it, right? With team working together and being able to meet deadlines and
Absolutely.
produce. Um, so Jim, first of all, tell us some tips about building an international team and what are some things we can do to make sure that team is a strong team, productive team?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start by saying, Suzanne, that uh, the issues that we have in the US when it comes to recruiting and retaining employees are not unique to the US. They are experienced worldwide. I have clients in the UK and Italy and in the Asian countries that really struggle with the same issues. They are struggling with that next generation. They're struggling with different reasons as well, right? South Korea has a contracting working age population as you look towards their future. China has a contracting working age population. Vietnam has an expanding one, but their infrastructure just isn't in place to support mass scale manufacturing, right? So as you look worldwide at the demographics, all that, it's a little bit different. But to build those international teams, again, connect to that purpose of your organization, but you have to be very mindful of local cultures and customs as well when building that company culture. Because what people value in the US are going to be different than what people in Italy or the UK value. Broad strokes, not in everything, but broad strokes. So building that company culture and making sure that you're ingraining them into your culture to build that robust team is very important. But there are some things that aren't necessarily subject to those differences. Accountability. Everybody loves being held accountable, right? So if you build a culture based on accountability, that's international. That's a global language of business. Metrics. Everybody wants to be measured. I don't care if it's the president of the U.S. or the Queen of England, King of England. Now I got to change my metaphor, or my analogy, I guess. The King of England wants to be measured. They're measured by their success by their constituents, right? Everybody wants to be measured. So can you put in place metrics and measurements and smart goals that span globally? So there are some things that are can be used across a globe as ways that you can build these teams, and that's really the two biggest ones that I've seen. But it's also providing those learning pathways for people so that they really feel like their careers are progressing.
I love that. So feeling that they're not stagnant, that there's opportunities to grow and part of a bigger picture.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the challenges that this isn't just manufacturing, this is probably throughout, is leaders being able to connect with what motivates their people, right? Sometimes they think it's all money. Sometimes they think, and somebody's supposed to hear, good job. You're doing a good job and I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
And how do you, as a manufacturer, and a lot of times you're dealing with a larger team, sometimes you're dealing with an international team. How do you figure out what motivates them and so that you can become aligned with that and increase that motivation?
Yeah, great question. Because that's in manufacturing and really in any industry, not just skilled trades. This is something that is lacking in a lot of organizations. It's those feedback mechanisms. How are you gathering? How are you communicating and gathering feedback from your employees? I talk about employee engagement surveys. That's one thing that I use. But it's not the only way to gather employee sentiment and feedback from your employees. But if you provide people with the opportunity to speak up and are able to show and tell them how their voice is truly going to affect the future of the organization, of their team, whatever it is that you're leading, they're going to be more apt. The second part of that is you have to give them the ability to provide that feedback anonymously and really understand that you're not necessarily always going to get in a one-on-one conversation what motivates that person. But when you ask in an anonymous way, people will tell you. But then you do have the in-person, focus groups and one-on-one conversations. But that leads to a larger conversation, and we could probably do an entire part two about this, Suzanne, in performance management, right? A lot of people have performance management conversations, and they do it as an event once a year, and they're like, "All right, great, you scored a 4 out of 5 on your review. Here's your raise. I'll talk to you in a year." And that's not really enough. If leaders truly want to understand what is motivating their people, they need to be checking in every 2 to 3 weeks and having just quick stand-up conversations about performances, about goals, about what motivates them, about what drives them within the organization. And that will change the dynamic that will really keep people entrenched in your organization.
I love that every 2 to 3 weeks having feedback loops and conversations and that's very interesting. I'm curious, what do you recommend in manufacturing as a leader to staff ratio or manager to staff ratio?
So the data shows, and data is data. But when you are working with as an executive in manufacturing, you really want no more than 6 direct reports coming into you. And the data shows that after 6 employees, your effectiveness really nosedives. It becomes, I believe it's 15% less effectiveness for every direct report that you add after 6. When you're talking about shop floor, plant floor, it's really hard to have just teams of 6 because there's so much fewer management, and you don't want to be top heavy with management, right? So the data shows between 15 to 20 is an effective reporting line from that middle management down to the shop floor. You know, I would say don't have more than the middle manager can have conversations with their people every 2 to 3 weeks and still complete the other tasks that are expected of them. If you provide them opportunities to lead people, but you give them too many people that they can't have those one-on-ones, you're slowly going to lose the organization as a whole.
Right. Or even too many tasks. You give that middle manager too many tasks, then they're
Absolutely.
not going to be able to do it. Because I think that was one of the biggest shifts when I got into leadership was the expectation to do more was less, but to spend more time with the people and train was
Yeah,
really the big emphasis. And a lot of times that's not necessarily communicated very well for that
absolutely.
to happen. But at that point, it's about really being with the people at that point and allowing them to shine through.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love that.
So, so Jim, this was like so many juicy morsels that we talked about today. And I'm like, I feel so gifted because we've got such gleams of wisdom from you.
Oh, thank you.
Um, we're gonna have to have you back again someday to talk about
Anytime.
some of these other micro topics and dig a little bit deeper. But one of the things that we do like to ask our guests as we wrap up is, if you could leave us with any advice, it could be personal, it could be business, what would that piece of advice be?
This may be an unpopular opinion on the Profit First podcast, but I'm going to say put the humans before the profits, and the profits will follow. I promise. If you empower your leaders and you yourself as leaders lead with a human-centric model of leadership, your profits will follow and you will keep the employees, which of course will lead to higher profits. But start with the people and then get into profits, and your business will not only succeed, but you'll scale and you'll thrive.
I love it. And I can't agree with you more. I think that you're absolutely right. It's about hiring good people and raising them up to be most effective because that's how you increase profits is you have really good
Absolutely.
people.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Suzanne. I really appreciate being on today. This was a great conversation.
I was. Now, Jim, how do we reach out to you? How do we find you? How do we connect with you to learn more?
Yeah. So you can reach me at jim.mayer at tcostrategies.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to find me. I'm a goofy middle-aged white dude in a bathtub full of ping pong balls on LinkedIn. So you can't miss me. But that's the best place to find me, or at my email address, tcostrategies.com.
Thank you, Jim. And we'll put your information in the show notes so people can click on that once they get to a safe place.
Awesome.
Jim, thanks so much for sharing your morsels of wisdom with us today.
Yeah, this was great. Again, I think we should do it again. We'll have a manufacturing culture and profit first crossover episode where we interview each other or something. It'd be a blast.
I love it. I love it. That's a great idea.
All
All
right.
right. Thanks, Jim. Until next time.